you, Professor Rajasekharan Pillai. Good afternoon to all of you. Professor Pillai gave a fairly detailed overview of the challenges which we are going to face in the sector of education. And I'm not surprised because he's probably one of the persons who have been seeing it from the real close quarters, like many of us who are slightly behind. I'm going to highlight only a few things which will not be very different from what Rajasekharan has mentioned, but some specific points I would like to highlight. You will agree with me that education across the world is passing through major changes and turbulent times. In some countries, it is driven by the changing demography. There are no students, so departments are getting closed. And in some countries, other countries, the changing opportunities and challenges are there. Like, for example, in this country. And in some other cases, is the globalization which is making all the difference. India is no exception, and we also have this kind of turbulences going through in our system. As was mentioned by Professor Pillai, we are a country of 1 billion people, and by normal standards, 20% of this population is in the educatable age. That means we have a challenge of educating 200 million youngsters. I would like to separate 2 or 3 different segments in this in terms of age group, because the challenges and the solutions are not the same. One, of course, is the primary education. You may say between the age 5 to 10 years of age. Then we have the secondary education. Then we have undergraduate education in colleges. And finally, the postgraduate education, including research education. During the primary stage, the objective is clearly to address the fundamentals, basic requirements for the youngster, like literacy, scientific awareness, social consciousness. Basically, we train him to be a part of the society, more than that. On the other hand, during the secondary stage, and also probably during the undergraduate stage, the individual is expected to learn some level of skills that will create job opportunities. He must be able to get into the system and contribute in an economic sense. It is at this stage a mouth to feed gets converted into a pair of skilled hands that can contribute to national wealth. In fact, a liability gets converted into asset. At the primary school level, it is a social responsibility, but at the secondary school level, we have to move beyond that. Postgraduate education and beyond is certainly different. It's a real knowledge worker who is getting created during this time, and we should also be trained to convert knowledge into economic gains. The kind of training which he needs is very different from the kind of training which an average school child or even a college undergraduate student will get. So, how have we performed? In India, as a nation, how have we done? Considering that a substantial number of children do not even go to school, fairly large number, in terms of percentage maybe 20%, but that's a big number. And we need to pass the Right to Education Act. When are we doing it? 60 years after attaining independence. It clearly shows that we have a long way to go in primary education. We have not reached where we are supposed to be reaching. We need to ensure as an obligation that every child in the age group 5 to 10 years has access to education irrespective of where they are and to which social and economic strata they belong to. It's not a matter of resources as it is often made out to be. Many people say, where is the money and all. It's not a question of resources at all. The per capita investment for primary education is probably the least. It also generates large opportunities. Every 20 student demands one teacher, and they have to be locally available. They are not from elsewhere. But unfortunately, every man is not a good teacher. You have to, even if he is not a teacher, you have to train him to be a good teacher, give him the right inputs and information so that he could be a good teacher. It's actually a matter of organizing our fundamentals, where we have not done very well. Now, this is where I believe also technology can help us. Number one, make a teacher into a good teacher by giving the right inputs to him, and more importantly, by increasing the number of student to teacher ratio. We need to go from 20 students and one teacher to maybe 200 students and one teacher. And this cannot be done unless technology is made available to him to increase this. This is true for other segments of education also, but more true in the age of primary education because they are highly dispersed. You cannot move people from a village in Chhattisgarh to Bombay or Delhi for primary education. It has to be local. And it is not a question of investment at all. The biggest deficiency of our secondary education is our failure to impart any marketable skill. If the person comes out after 12th standard, you ask him, what are you good at? He has no answer. We don't train him at all. While we have chronic shortage of skilled people across all sectors, this is one of the corporate heads said that our problem is not unemployment, it's our problem is unemployability. Effectively, we have trained him for 7-8 years in the secondary school without gaining anything. We have not made him fit for anything. And I still remember once I was talking to another chief minister, I said, your state is very poor in education. Why don't you invest in education? He said, what? My cousin is a B.Tech in automobile engineering, and where is he now? He is looking for a mechanic to fix his scooter. He cannot fix it himself. What kind of education is this? Why should I invest in this? He was right. Okay, that's our lacuna. And of course, this lacuna extends beyond the secondary school is a degree college. If a person comes out with a BA or a BSc or something, and you ask him, what can you do? He says, whatever you ask me to do, I will do. And he doesn't know how to do. All right, that is not education at all. And our colleges are very rigid and lethargic and often fail to see emerging needs and opportunities. Let's take one example. Overwhelming success of institutions like NIIT. NIIT, you know, is all over the world. In imparting industry-relevant skills, of course at a cost, you have to pay, is a reflection of the failure of the formal system in identifying an emerging need. Why this could not have been taught in the school itself? Why should he go and pay somewhere else, somebody else heavily to get the same education which he could have received in the college as a part of the normal thing? This morning I was looking at an advertisement which says that the industry needs 1,000 people who are good at marketing. They are going to train him in marketing and they are going to give him almost guaranteed placement. Then the application costs 500 rupees. So how much it will cost for training, you can imagine for yourself. Can an average student afford it? Why should he pay so much? Why this could not have been done in the school itself? In fact, I keep saying that Friday must be a skill development day in every school. Now you may ask, where are the teachers and how do I know the market? Clearly, obviously, the school may not be in a position to identify the market. A clear case for a public-private partnership. Let the industry be part of this program. One day, the training will be as decided demand by the industry. Faculty should be on loan from the industry. The person doesn't pay 500 rupees for an application form to get enrolled in such a program. There are possibilities, there are methods of doing it. We have not addressed it. And so the question is, why can't our schools and colleges offer skill development in a public-private partnership mode on a regular basis, taking into account the demands of the industry? The industry can help the schools and colleges in identifying the relevant skills and provide help even in training the trainers, training the teachers to do that, perhaps help them subsequently in employment. This requires some thinking, this requires some strategies. System clearly has to be flexible in time and space. What is relevant for Delhi is not relevant for a village in Chhattisgarh, so it has to be highly flexible and highly changing with time. It cannot be what is today will go on for the next 20 years like some of the syllabuses. Now, IT-enabled education ensures that education and skill development goes beyond the educational institutions. I've come out with a skill, 5 years down the line, I know the market is changing. I cannot go back to the school. But then the skill is requirement is real. So how does he get? Again, IT comes into the picture and you have to make use of this technology. Our postgraduate education is, of course, subcritical. We all agree, even in a high demand area like IT, our turnout of research students and research outputs are well below reasonable levels. But a few years before, the number of PhDs produced in IT, computers education, was something which can be counted in two hands with all the institutions taken into account. While in some areas of high technology, we have been performing on a globally competitive level, our ranking among the Committee of Nations, in spite of it, in terms of scientific productivity, has been pretty low. Among the reasons for this, two stand out. One is of the per capita investment for research